Fasteners! Yay, fasteners! Read the handout. Can't speak on five.
It's there.
Nails.
Oh,
Wait, I
never
want to
mind.
say one thing about fasteners. I'm going to go over here and get a book. This is the Master Car Company. They exist in the United States. How many people have heard of the Master Car? There you go.
They sell everything, literally everything.
This catalog has, we'll go to the back of the page. We're going to start looking. Try to get to the back page. And this is an old catalog. We're almost there.
You're fine.
There we go. 3,675 pages of all the things you could possibly ever need to run your corporation, to do maintenance at your place. We're going to go to the back because that's where all the fasteners are. Look, we got a set screws, machine screws. There's catches, pull handles. Trying to get an idea of where screws start at. Because fasteners are all in the back of the book. Here we go. Fastening and sealing. We won't go all the way to the end of sealing. Oh, there's less pages than I thought. Here we go. So, 2,967 to 3,200. So, how many pages is that? So roughly 300 pages of tiny little print. That's how many different fasteners exist in the world, or at least they make MasterCard. So, and that's, I mean, if you go through here, there's all kinds of other stuff too. But I need a screw. Okay, which one of these 300 pages would you like me to pick your screw off of? So, nails. We don't use nails. The last time I drove a nail, I don't remember when. We don't use nails in our shop, and we do, but rarely do we do it. Because we just don't. Price, speed, availability of prior fasteners, put hammer driven nails into a specialty or boutique realm. We do use nails, but very, very rarely. The last time I used, I know what the last time I used a nail was. We did a little show last year called Puffs, and I went into the, we didn't talk about spring hinges. How many people have walked through a door and then the door closes, it goes shut with because their door has springs on it? That's what we used on the doors that were in Puffs, and they have a spring in them. They have this little thing that you have to wind up. You put a pin in, you rotate it around, you put another pin in, you keep rotating it around. That's the last time I went and got some nails and I cut them down to make the little pins for the hinges. I didn't even use those nails. Pneumatic fasteners. Look, staples. Varieties of staples. I should have brought a staple gun with me. We have pneumatic powered staple guns. You use compressed air and a hose, you plug them in, and it shoots blam, 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 and shoots the staples out of them. That's what we use for nails. We don't drive them with a hand. What we most commonly use is, this is a 1/4 inch narrow crown staple. That's what we call them. The width of the staple is 1/4 inch. That's why we call it a 1/4 inch crown. The leg on this particular staple is 1.5 inches. They come in all different lengths. Look, I have different lengths here. There's a 3/4 inch staple. There's an 1.25 inch staple. There's the other ones I have. So they're the same width. So you can use the same staple gun, but they're different lengths. Why do we have different lengths? Different thicknesses of fasteners. And what happens whenever you're stapling the cleats on the bottom of your finished coffee tabletop and you forget to check which staples are in the gun? And you can't figure out why you stapled all these boards on the bottom of your coffee tabletop, and you can't figure out why you can't pick it up because you stapled all the way through the coffee tabletop. It wasn't me. It's a friend of a friend that did that. But I have shot staples through something because I didn't check how long the staples were. The other one was I had some students build a flat one time, and they didn't check the staples in the gun. They put the frame of the flat together and realized it was upside down on the table. They needed to turn it over to put the glue on it, and they picked it up, and they had used 3/4 inch staples to staple the 3/4 inch boards together. And so the staples were barely sticking out into the wood because they hadn't used the long enough staples. So they picked it up and they had it almost turned over and the whole thing just like collapsed. And they were like, it was the most hilarious, unfortunate thing I've seen in a long time. Okay. This is a roofing staple. This is what they use to staple shingles down on roofs with, but we use it to connect boards together in the shop. Take a couple boards. If I put the boards together like this, then I can staple across that joint, put some glue in there, and staple it on both sides. It makes a really strong joint. So that's not how this was intended to be used, but we figured out that it works, and that's how we use it. We have a staple gun that has a 1 inch wide thing that staples down. That's the only thing. Well, yes, that's what we use it for. And you can get these staples in a variety of lengths too. We buy the 5/8 inch length ones because that's how thick the board is, so that they can go all the way through. But you can buy them. I have staples. I have one of these at home, and I have
Thanks,
staples.
Simone.
I have staples that came with the gun. I've never used them on anything. Okay. Screws. Pointy, they make their own threads in the material they're driven into. Drywall screws are quite common in seam-offs because they're inexpensive and readily available. We use a similar screw that is especially designed for production line furniture assembly. There's your drywall screw. You can pass these around because you can't really see the differences. Here's a couple of drywall screws and a couple. I'll start them down here. Here's a couple of drywall screws. And there's a couple of assembly screws. Notice the differences in those two screws. They're largely the same, but the assembly screw is a heavier, more durable screw. Not as inexpensive as the drywall screws. But if you go to basically any store, you can buy drywall screws. You don't have to go to a specialty supplier to get them. Bolts, not pointy, made with pre-threaded materials or nuts. SAE or inch size are most common in the US. Why? Because we are full of ourselves. Back whenever they were making threaded fasteners, we were using the empirical system. That's why they became prevalent. Globalization has caught up with this, and so metric fasteners are becoming much more common. They took over the automotive industry, I don't know, a couple decades ago, back in the 80s. And so I predict in your lifetime we will see that SAE fasteners disappear. Inch sizes will stop being used because they're because the whole rest the only place that uses them are the countries that use empirical measurements, which is the United States and 2 other small countries. I don't even know, but the only reason that the SAE bolt sizes exist is because the U.S. is such a large economy. That's the only reason. They've already been phased out by now. But it's bolts and nuts that thread on there. Everybody understands that concept, right? I'm sure there's other things. Oh, why do we use washers? Why do washers exist?
Yeah, why do washers exist?
Say that again. To make a gap in between it? No. Go. Protects, I'll give you partial credit for that. Keeps the nut from going, say that in a different way. That's, you're exactly it. So if I take this bolt, let me get this off of here. This bolt, and I stick it through a piece of material, through a board, and I put the nut down on there, and I start tightening it up, what's it going to do to the soft wood? It's just going to start going down in the wood. If I put a washer on there, what's the washer going to do? There you go. It distributes the load. That's what washers do. It distributes the load. So we choose a washer based on how soft the material is and how much load we need to distribute. And or if the hole is too big for the fastener, we need to make the nut bigger. Then we can use a much larger washer. And so the purpose of washers is to distribute the load. Sometimes we use them to protect the finish or something like that, but typically it is to distribute load. There was something else I just had not thought about before. So if you have a metal thing, I don't have a small enough bolt to fit through the hole. If I have a metal thing, do I need to put a washer on there to put the nut on? Typically, no. It depends on what we're doing, but typically, no. I can just put the nut on there because the nut isn't going to compress the material because it's so hard. Sometimes when you get into like hollow things, like square tube, we use a lot of square tube to build scenery. And if I put a nut on there, if I put a bolt in there and I start just tightening it down, I can generate enough force to just crush the steel tubing. And so I put a washer on there to distribute the load out to the sides of the square tube instead of just putting it in the center. So distribute the load. Washers distribute load. Oh, we didn't talk about carriage bolts. One of the fasteners that we use sort of commonly, I don't even see one here in the thing, is a carriage bolt. Look, here's a carriage bolt. And you'll notice that it has a smooth edge on it, a smooth head on it. The idea of this is that it's got a square shoulder under here, so when you put it in the wood, it pulls that square shoulder down into the wood to keep it from turning, to hold it steady. And so there's only this smooth part sticking out the other side of it. There's pluses and minuses to that, but it is a carriage bolt is a common fastener that is used in the theater a lot.
Like to attach legs to a platform.
Right, exactly. Legs to a platform. Is Curtis a big fan of carriage bolts?
No.
No, not really. So, but we do use them a lot. One of the big disadvantages of a carriage bolt is if you get it in that, you've tightened it down, it's in the wood, and then something happens. The threads get damaged, or it gets bent, or something like that, and you're trying to get the bolt, you're trying to get the nut off of it, and so the wood is soft, and so it's possible to spin the shoulders out in the wood. And then you don't have a way to get a hold of it, to hold the other end, you put a wrench on it, and the bolt's just turning. You're not actually taking the nut off, you're just tearing up the wood. So that's one of the big drawbacks.